Okay.
Welcome to February. You know what that means? Spring training, less than 2 weeks away. And it's time for some 2024 predictions. We'll kick them off by telling you what type of season a certain second baseman is going to have. We've got that and more on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds, and my name is Jeff Carr. His name is Stephen Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans, and we've turned an addiction to this team into information for you. Locked On Reds is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day, and as we lead up to pitchers and catchers reporting, we will be with you every step of the way. Thanks for making Locked On Reds part of your day. On today's show, if you're an everydayer, thank you so much, by the way, for being an everydayer. If you're just joining us for the first time, you should probably subscribe because we're going to be bringing you your favorite baseball team every single day. And on today's show, we are going to talk about one of our first predictions because we are going to predict some things. Last year, we predicted things. The year before that, we predicted things, and I didn't write them down. But this year, we're going to write them down, and we're going to laugh at probably how wrong they are, but we're going to tell you why a certain second baseman is going to be absolutely amazing this year. Just how amazing will he be? Steve has some thoughts as to how high that could go. We are also going to break down how the Reds stack up against the rest of the division. We will begin with the stupid Cardinals that FanDuel has as the favorites to win the division, whatever. And later on, we'll be telling you who the best number 52 is as we are 52 days away from opening day. Before we get to all of that, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New users just join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. And where we're going to get started, Steve, is you have a prediction.
I do, and it doesn't line up with what the national folks are saying right now, and so that makes me happy because I tend to be right more than they do. Matt McLain will be an all-star in 2024, and I'm not just talking about because the Reds get one guy. He's going to be one of several all-stars that the Reds have in 2024, but I am predicting big things from Matt McLain in 2024. Jeff, listen, he is coming off of 2023 where he very quickly proved himself to be an integral part of the Reds lineup. There was a marked difference in offensive production on this team when he was in the lineup versus when he was not. In 89 games in 2023, Jeff, his slash line was 290, 357, 507. You heard me right, 507. OPS plus of 129. This is a rookie that came up in May in Colorado and never looked back. He hit 16 home runs, stole 14 bases. He was definitely an impact player right out of the gate for the Cincinnati Reds. I think he is going to get even better in 2024. Some of those individual statistic numbers will come down, I think, Jeff, for 2024. I don't know that he'll hit 290 again, but I don't think it's going to fall off very much. I see him as a 275 to 280 average type of hitter. I don't think he'll dip much below that. That on-base percentage, I think that 357 area, that's right for him. I see him between 350 and 375 on base in 2024. The slugging, while it will come down from that 507, I don't think it comes down a whole lot. I think he drops into the 490 range because I do think his home run totals will go up in 2024. I have him as at least a 20 homer, 20 stolen base guy in 2024 because his playing time is going to go up. I predict 140 to 150 games for Matt McLain in 2024.
I like that. I do find there's two questions that I will have for Matt McLain's All-Star candidacy as we go along this season, because number one of the most recognizable, arguably the most recognizable faces in baseball is going to be playing a lot of second base this year for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that is Mookie Betts. Does he go on the ballot as an outfielder or as a second baseman? That's going to be a big thing for that. Also, the other part of this is the name recognition. As good as Matt McLain is, we have seen it before that it's the people whose names are known are the ones who get the votes. There's been years past where Joey Votto has gotten more votes than guys who have played better than him. I mean, I remember, a couple of years ago, Scooter Gennett was playing really, really well, but Joey Votto got more votes than he did because everybody knows who Joey Votto is. I think when it comes to the Reds voting, as long as Elly De La Cruz is taking that next step that we're talking about that he can do, he's going to get votes because people know who he is. Like if you go to FanDuel.com right now, you see some prop bets of his because people care about Elly De La Cruz on a national level, and they're still not necessarily sure who Matt McLain is, despite the fact that he actually came up before Elly De La Cruz did. So I think there's just a little bit of challenge for him about the whole being known thing. So he's probably going to have to do something early on to grab everyone's attention. But I am with you. I think the national folks are wrong about their projections because what they have done, and if you look at Zips and if you look at Baseball Reference and folks who are predicting his performance, one of the first things that I see that jumps off the page at me is that they predict his batting average for the season is going to be 250. Or 254, some version of 250, 250 something. That's a huge drop off. And I get it. He only played in 89 games, but they are saying that the lack of exposure to the Major League Baseball and his luck factor last year was just so high that it's going to all come crashing down this season. And I do not agree with that.
Yeah, I don't either, Jeff. And I also don't think they're projecting him to play in enough games for the Reds in 2024. He was injured. That is true. He came up in May, so he missed some games at the beginning of the season as well. I think he's going to be in this lineup. As I said, 140 to 150 games. I think he's going to be healthy. I think he's going to be around. And I don't agree that his drop off is going to be drastic like they are predicting. To your point about the All-Star selection. Yeah, I don't think he gets voted in for the very reason you mentioned. I think Mookie Betts will be listed as a second baseman on the All-Star ballot. But this I do know. Reds country can rally and get guys voted into the All-Star game. Cincinnati did it in 2015 with Todd Frazier at third base. When the team is playing well or there is some excitement, Reds fans turn out, Reds fans participate. And I think this team is going to be so much fun. Attendance is going to be up. No longer do you have to go to the ballpark to vote, but I think the excitement and the energy around the team is going to push people to get on their phones, get on their computers, and cast those votes.
I think, too, this will be something that we push as soon as voting starts because they have that weird not necessarily weird. I think I kind of like the way they do all-star voting now, but the whole, like, you nominate finalists and then the next round of voting, you actually pick the player. So I think he could definitely be a finalist if he gets out to a hot start. But like I said, he's going to have to do something that, either he's on the ESPN top 10 a couple of times early on in the season, or he's had like a crazy, like 2-3 homer game, something like that gets people's attention so that folks outside of Reds country also know who Matt McLain is, because when they see their ballots, they're going to see Mookie Betts at second base. And then that's going to be all they see. And if they don't have some sort of, underlying hatred for the Dodgers, which is a lot of people, then they may end up just voting for Mookie Betts by default. So Matt McLain's going to have to do that. I think he can, though. Dude's got a lot of talent. The thing that some folks are coming at with the projections is that last year, and I mentioned this in my, do I think he's going to regress or do I buy his small sample size, is that his quality of contact is just league average. It's not necessarily impressive like Elly or CES or Will Benson or something like that, where it's, very high on average. It's just right there where everyone else in the league is. So everyone is having a little bit of pause with that, combined with a high batting average on balls in play. And that's where they think that the fall off is going to come. I just think that his speed coupled with his ability to hit is probably a bigger factor than people are giving it credit for.
That's true. And when we talked to him a couple of years ago now, when he was still in the minor leagues, he told us exactly what areas of his game he was trying to work on. And then he went out and did the exact things he said he was going to do. And I don't think that this past offseason was any different. I don't for one second think he just went and sat on his hands this offseason and was happy with his performance. He's been out there working on.
Yeah,
He's
he's
been out
hungry.
there working on things, and he's going to come in ready to play. And I think that that's going to translate into improved numbers. I said this, I forget if it was on our show, Jeff, or if we were doing somebody else's show, but I said that a big prediction for me in 2024 is I don't think we're going to see sophomore slumps. I think everybody will play better in 2024 than they did in 2023 as far as the big rookies go. Because while they were successful, there was a lot of room for improvement. And I think they were all still on that upward arc. And Matt McLain is no exception to that.
No, I would agree with that. In fact, I think that he is arguably one of the top people. We talked about this a lot ad nauseum, and as we fight between who's better between Ellie and Matt McLain, it's a good discussion to have. I think it's a good problem to have. But Matt McLain is definitely coming from a much higher floor than most of the other rookies, including Ellie De La Cruz, is coming from.
Well, this I know. Matt McLain, he's going to be in this lineup, and when he is the engine that powers the Reds lineup. We've seen it, and I'm looking forward to it in 2024. All right, Jeff, you mentioned this a little bit. According to FanDuel, I don't know what they're drinking over there right now. The St. Louis Cardinals are the team to beat in the National League Central. And coming up, we're going to tell you how the Reds stack up against those Dirty Birds in Missouri. Before we do that, let's talk about FanDuel for a second. Happy Super Bowl to all of you who celebrate from FanDuel and from Locked On. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite food snacks. In fact, I always make food from the two cities that are in the Super Bowl and kind of do a celebration that way. And then I place some super bets. New customers right now join FanDuel and you'll get $200 in bonus bets back if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So throw $5 at the Super Bowl, you win, you are going to get $200 back in bonus bets. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. Looking ahead, FanDuel has over-unders on Ellie's home run total. In 2024, well, it's 21.5. I think the over is within reach, Jeff. We'll have to ask Jeff about that because he always takes the over. If you want to get in on that action, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start turning your sports knowledge into cash. FanDuel is an official partner of the National Football League and the official sportsbook of Locked On. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts like Jeff and I from around the Locked On network, plus all of Locked On's national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Coming up on the next episode of Locked On Reds, should the Reds be worried about those Chicago Cubbies? We're going to tell you tomorrow, so make sure you are subscribed. But the conversation for today, Jeffrey, is about those Dirty Birds down in St. Louis, the aged, the elderly St. Louis Cardinals. I don't understand why they are ranked and picked to win this division. I think maybe it's just the residual. What's Ashley Davis over there on Twitter says all the time? The Cardinals and their devil magic, I think is what she says. I think this is residual Cardinals devil magic that they're being picked as the favorite in the National League Central right now.
There's a lot of nuances to really get into as to why people are being brainwashed. Maybe they're gaslighting themselves. They like looking in the mirror and gaslighting themselves to thinking that the Cardinals are going to be the favorites in this division. I don't know what it is, because there's a simplistic way to look at this. They were last in the division last year. They went out and they got Sonny Gray, but they also added two guys who led the league in hits allowed and led the league in homers allowed. Their defense didn't get any better. In fact, they lost one of their everyday outfielders. They traded him for a relief pitcher. And none of the guys that they've been calling up here recently have really just been setting the world on fire. Like, it felt like for a decade plus, every time the Cardinals churned through a player, they traded him. Guy hit free agency. They had someone else that they called up right as soon as that guy left, and they didn't miss a beat. That hasn't happened for a few years, and it really hasn't happened on the pitching side of things. That's why most of their moves, they went out and they got pitchers this last season. And yet, for some reason, FanDuel's looking at this, and they're saying that all of that equals Cardinals winning the division this year. They have their odds at plus 135. That's better than the Cubs, better than the Reds, much better than the Brewers, and much better than the Pirates. I don't understand, and there's plenty of reasons as to why I don't understand, but we got to start with what they did this offseason, Steve.
Yeah, they signed some names. I mean, names you're going to know. They went out and signed Sonny Gray. That's a good pickup in my estimation. That's probably
that one hurt. That one did hurt. Yeah.
That one was a little wounding, especially when the Reds were kind of in the hunt on that one. So I felt that one a little bit. But then they go out, they signed Lance Lynn. Okay. They signed Kyle Gibson. Okay. They signed Matt Carpenter. Okay. And then you couple that with the fact that Paul Goldschmidt's not getting any younger.
No.
Nolan Arenado's not getting any younger. It's going to be sad if this team, it's going to be sad if this team goes to an extra inning game and the nursing home bus comes and picks up half the team before the game is over and takes them back to tuck them in. I don't understand why they're getting such favorable reviews, because yes, these are names we know, but all of these players are past their primes. All of these players are well on the wrong side of the decline curve. So while it may generate some buzz amongst a fan base in St. Louis that might not be as educated as diehard fans, because they'll recognize the names and they'll be excited about it, I don't see that translates to the field or anybody else in the division, or professional odds makers should be giving them this kind of cred just because they signed some guys with names.
And to be frank, as I don't like to disparage Sonny Gray because I love Sonny Gray, but he's a mid-30s guy that's dealt with injuries. So it's not as if he's a sure thing. He's definitely the best move that they made. They signed a couple of relief pitchers that have had solid careers to this point, but none of them were jumping off the page at anybody. And they lost Tyler O'Neill. I keep pointing back to this, and I know that he had a down year for the Cardinals last year. If you ask our buddy JD over at Locked On Cardinals, he'll tell you that. But you're talking about a dude that's been batting cleanup for them for the better part of the last 3 years. So they traded him for a relief pitcher, and I don't know who replaces him. It's not like Juan Yepes really looked like he was going to play in the outfield, let alone could he hit the ball. And I think he's gone anyway too. So I don't know who steps into that role. You've got Dylan Carlson, who was supposed to be the next coming of, Jim Edmonds in a Cardinals uniform, not a Reds uniform. But in a Cardinals uniform. But that hasn't happened. There's just so much that I feel like the Cardinals have not replaced. And then they start getting rid of people and they bring in these old guys. Like they're not serving their players orange slices in the clubhouse here in St. Louis. They're giving them tapioca pudding. And I really think that that's not going to equal a division championship.
Oh, cream corn on the player buffet. You are absolutely correct. And you talked about where they're starting from. They're coming from a place of being last in the National League Central. So let's just look at these pitching additions. This pitching staff in 2023 ranked 12th in ERA. They were 14th in strikeout, 8th in walks, 14th in hits. They were 3rd in homers allowed and 10th in WAR. These upgrades are not true upgrades. Those numbers are not going to move in the correct direction. If anything, I could see those numbers getting worse in 2024. And then from an offensive production standpoint, 10th in runs scored, 7th in batting average, 7th in on-base percentage, 6th in slugging percentage, 5th in home runs, 9th in WAR. Matt Carpenter's not moving that needle.
No, their lineup didn't get better. Their pitching staff, while they added people to it, let's look at this, because I'm sure that there's a couple of people that are saying, well, Jeff, the Reds didn't rank that great in pitching stats either. Let me tell you this. The Cardinals were healthy. The Cardinals had their cast of pitchers that they wanted at the major league level. And the Cardinals had veterans. They didn't have rookies that were just trying to figure it out, and they still couldn't get it done. In fact, their best pitcher they traded before the trade deadline to Texas in Jordan Montgomery really helped out a lot of these stats. So I really think that when you compare the Reds, who used a pitching staff that was held together with duct tape and Band-Aids and ace bandages and all that other stuff because everybody was hurt, and you had all these rookies who were trying to figure it out, and you had some different dudes playing in a bullpen that you're like, okay, we're hoping that they're going to pitch well, but didn't know that they were going to pitch well. And then all of a sudden, we're worried about how this team's going to pitch next year because of all the young stuff. The Reds have far more talent in their pitching staff than do the Cardinals. And I think that they are going to be a much better pitching staff this year. Cardinals lineup doesn't scare me. Like literally outside of Goldschmidt, it doesn't scare me anymore. And Nolan Arenado doesn't scare me anymore.
Nope. And don't forget, the Reds are leaps and bounds and miles ahead of the Cardinals in depth. So even if
a couple
some
injuries,
of these
Cardinals
guys,
are done.
the Cardinals are done. Even if some of these guys that are names do, have that swan song, recovery, new city boost, if that thing happens, even if that is the case, if one of them gets hurt, there's not a replacement. There is no next man up in St. Louis. So I think that gives the Reds a big advantage as well.
Yeah, I think in you add in the fact that the pitchers that they have added, while Sonny Gray is pretty good at striking people out, he also his key is giving up weak contact on the ground. Kyle Gibson gave up the most hits in the league last year, which means he gives up a lot of contact. And Lance Lane gives up a lot of contact. He allowed the most homers last year. So you're going to rely on your defense. Where were they? They were 19th and outs above average as a team last year. The Cardinals were. They were not a very good defensive ball club. And normally we are always talking about them being at the top of the league. So being 19th is like a huge insult to the Yadier Molinas of the world, which if you want to insult him, absolutely go ahead. But when you look at the rest of this, the throat slash thing, he's doing it in the mirror now. But when you talk about this defense supporting this pitching staff, I am not worried. The Reds stack up very well against the Cardinals, and I think that they will finish ahead of them without a doubt. And that
no, absolutely, Jeff. I for sure. And don't forget that added bonus, it'll be so much fun to watch them fail in 2024. It doesn't get any better than that. A good Reds team and a crappy Cardinals team. I mean, who could ask for anything
last year was so beautiful for that, and I think we're going to see, maybe not to the same extent. Like, I think the moves that the Cardinals made on their pitching staff is going to bring them back to the middle of the pack. But I don't think it makes them an above 500 team. I don't think it makes them a playoff team. I don't think it makes them a division championship team. So I'm not worried about them. And that's why we started this series. Cardinals started tomorrow. We're going to talk about how the Reds stack up with the Cubs. So make sure that you don't miss that. And coming up here in just a moment, we are 52 days away from opening day. Who was the best Red to wear the number 52? We'll talk about that coming up next. Before we talk about that, though, wanted to remind you, you can follow us in between episodes. You can follow me on Twitter, X, at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. And you can follow the show, Locked On Reds. There is no Fs in that. You can also bookmark InsideTheReds.com. We are covering the Reds in written form. Steve, myself, we've got a new writer over there, Caleb Sisk. He's got a lot of great stuff about some prospects and things like that. Ty Floyd. I believe there's an Edwin Arroyo write-up as well. Good stuff there. Also, James Rapine, Austin Elmore, Rick Uccino, all of those guys. We're talking about the Reds. InsideTheReds.com. And then join the Locked On Reds Discord page. A lot of ways you can keep up with us and talk Reds baseball in between episodes. InsideTheReds.com and the Locked On Reds Discord page. All right, Steve, we are 52 days away. We are 8 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting. We're 19 days away from the first spring training game, but we are 52 days away from the games that count. And when it comes to the number 52, there's only one name. And sure, he wore 4 different numbers while he was a Cincinnati Red, but Paul Derringer is absolutely, unequivocally the best number 52 in the history of the Cincinnati Reds.
Without question. He finished 8th in MVP voting in 1938, the year that he wore the number 52. He led the National League in starts with 37, complete games with 26, inning pitched with, brace yourself, 307 innings. Yeah. And hits allowed with 315.
Pitch to contact. And it was a different time. I mean, looking at pitching stats back then, this was around the time when the Reds won the World Series in 1940. I actually found a book on Amazon. There's a book about the 1940 Cincinnati Reds that I am very interested in. I just got that in, very interested to digging into. But Paul Derringer pitched at a different time. And, this was with Bucky Walters. This was with Johnny Vandermeer. This was when pitchers were pitching 9 innings more often than not. That's why he had 26 complete games. It was also a different time too, and I forgot to write this in the notes, but this was kind of funny. So he had 37 starts. He actually also had 4 relief appearances in which he finished those games. It was kind of hilarious to see that kind of thing. Like, they just approached pitching differently. And you had guys that started a lot more regularly and they pitched a lot crazy. I mean, this was back when wins and losses for a pitcher meant something. He was 21-14. That was the other thing too. He won 21 games, didn't lead the league in wins. I don't even know that he was top 3, but that's just how pitching worked in the late 30s.
Well, Jeff, he wasn't the only pitcher that has worn the number 52 that is near and dear to at least some Reds fans' hearts. Another one is Johnny Franco. John Franco wore this number when he came up as a rookie in 1984. He would change his number and he would go on to have a few good years with the Reds. But what I love the most, what makes me remember John Franco the most, is he was the key piece going back to the New York Mets that brought over Randy Myers to complete the trifecta that would become the Nasty Boys bullpen in 1990.
And he went on to have a pretty awesome career. Like, I always kind of think, like, I wonder what would have happened had he stayed. But yeah, when you get Randy Myers in the trade that sent him, that's a good trade. That's a pretty good trade. Number 52, we've talked about like the higher numbers, like 60 and 70 and 80 and all that other stuff. You're getting a lot of obscure players. The number 50, the numbers in the 50s really seem to be reserved for relief pitchers, because you had some names in there like Tony Cingrani, most recently, of course, Reaver San Martin. You did have Kyle Farmer, 2019, 2020, before they put the C on his chest there in 2021. I'm sorry, before someone wanted to put a C on his chest. Anyway,
you are going to get some hate in the comment section now. Hashtag Jeff hates Kyle Farmer, everyone.
But also, and this is a name, and you and I were talking about this in prep, and don't ask me why. This is one of the reasons that I do this podcast, because my brain is just broken for the Reds. When you ask me to name a left-handed pitcher for the Reds, I don't think of recent pitchers. I don't even think of Nick Lodolo. I don't think of Andrew Rabbit. I don't think of Sam Maul. I think of Daniel Ray Herrera and Bill Bray. Now, Daniel Ray Herrera, he actually wore the number 52. Don't ask me why that's a name on the top of my head, but it always is. And so when I saw that he was a guy on this list, now I couldn't tell you that he wore number 52. I just remember him being a lefty relief pitcher for the Reds there in the mid-2000s. Boom, there he is, Daniel Ray Herrera. He's on the list of 52 of the number 52 players.
That's why this segment's so much fun, to look back over the years when we're doing these individual days and just seeing the names like, oh, I forgot about that guy. I forgot he even played for the Reds. We've had a lot of those moments as we've been doing these segments. But I how you're asked about left-handed relievers and Norm Charlton doesn't come to mind. The aforementioned Randy Myers doesn't come to mind.
Look, I'm not
Daniel Ray Herrera.
Not defending myself at all. It's just that's how my brain is broken. Like, I firmly agree. There are much better left-handed pitchers that I could remember, and much sooner. I mean, much more recent left-handed pitchers that I can remember. And for some reason, that dude is on the top of my brain. But yeah, that's 52. We are 52 days away from the most anticipated season in my lifetime. Don't even think it's close. I can't think of another year that has been this anticipated, and there's so much fun to be had. That's why you need to be subscribed to Locked On Reds, because we are going to be with you every single day. So we go through spring training. So we go through the season. If there's big news, we're going to be here. If there's bad news, we're going to be here. I think there's going to be a lot more good than bad, though.
And just for fun, Jeff, before we get out of here, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, and I know that he's technically no longer a member of the Cincinnati Reds, but he's always a member of the Cincinnati Reds as far as I'm concerned. Joseph Daniel Votto at the NHL All-Star Game experience over the last couple of days. Did you see his social media posts? So he was stalking all of the mascots throughout the event and posting pictures of each and every mascot. And there was some back and forth online with some of the mascots. And, it was a good time. It was a fun follow. if you're not following Joey Votto on Instagram, you should be. He has just so unlocked his personality, and I wish that it could have been that way for a lot more years while he was in Cincinnati. But it was so fun watching him kind of cut loose and do his thing with the hockey mascots on social media yesterday.
Guy from Canada likes hockey. Who knew? No, I'm getting a real Michael Scott threat level midnight vibes here with this. That's him going to the NHL All-Star game. Maybe he's got to save it from Golden Face blowing up the puck or something. I don't know, whatever. But it was great to see that. Really excited. I still think he's going to end up with the Blue Jays. And I think that's going to be sooner rather than later. I bet as they go to spring training, they're like, yeah, by the way, we're also bringing this guy with us, Joseph Daniel Votto. He's going to be our first baseman. But, well, we'll see how all of that goes, because that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. We keep hearing rumors, and I'm glad that the rumors of him going to Milwaukee were not anything. I wouldn't mind. Yeah, I wouldn't mind it if he goes to the Angels. I just think he's going to end up with Toronto. And that is where we will end today's podcast. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. Like we mentioned, tomorrow, should we be worried about the Cubbies, about the kids from the north side that play the baseball in the blue uniforms at the old ballpark? I don't think so. And we'll tell you why on tomorrow's Locked On Reds. Steve, take us away.
All right, we're going to keep gathering up all this information, folks. We're going to break down the division. We're going to break down the roster. We're going to break down the days until opening day. We're going to gather up all the information. We're going to bring it right here to keep you locked on Reds every single day. Your brain is broken. Newsflash.
Daniel Ray Herrera. He also goes as Danny Herrera on Baseball Reference. I had to double check.